I think one of maybe the struggles with AI is like it can be a solution looking for a problem. Like everyone talks about it and everyone's supposed to be using it in all these magical ways, but sometimes you can struggle to find the specific thing like the problem it's solving for a customer or a need, and like I think that still really matters. And I think if AI is a way to let you just like speak the thing you want, I want the interface to look in this color scheme in this way with this layout, and I want it to change every 7 days, and I want it to speak in Spanish 1 day a week because I'm working on my Spanish, or some weird esoteric thing. Like if AI is a way to do that, then maybe a lot of the technology partnerships and ISVs and a lot of the like service providers and implementation partners, I don't know if they go away, but maybe they look very different.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Leadership Exchange podcast. My name is Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLeet or on LinkedIn at Tracy S. Lee. I've been spending a lot of time on there lately. I'm so excited to have Michael Kovacs here joining us today. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Tracy.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know Michael, he's actually former co-founder of a company called Open Channel, which was acquired by Stripe a few years ago. And then also former product lead at Stripe. So you've had a lot of adventures in the past few years.
Indeed, some good, some a little bit crazy, but lots of adventures.
Yes. Well, I think it's amazing to be able to see the startup life and then kind of the enterprise life. Although I think a lot of people also kind of go enterprise and then to startup, right? So you kind of did it the other way around.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of people, so I hear they work in a big company and they kind of get frustrated over and over. So they're like, oh, I just have to go and do the thing.
Right.
And then some people, of course, like you just start a thing you're interested in and then end up at I don't know if I'd consider Stripe enterprise,
No?
maybe teenage, but
Okay.
definitely big.
Yes. Well, amazing. And being a co-founder, I mean, you kind of shared this whole idea with me prior to this about selling and this idea that you kind of have to be selling over and over and over again and push through. What advice do you have for startups that are trying to sell or who struggle with selling?
Yeah, I mean, advice can be tough because it's usually like helpful in the specifics. So, to the
Mm-hmm.
extent our story is helpful, and so myself and then founder Brian, like we didn't come from like named schools or Google or big companies, or we didn't have
Mm-hmm.
prior exits, and so we originally got together to actually work on an idea that I was thinking about, and it was horrible, and I'm glad we didn't go anywhere near it. But Brian was working on the thing that would eventually become open channel, and we just kind of said, can we get one company to like use it, and it means we can
Mm-hmm.
like kind of sell it, there's kind of a market, um, but to do that I think part of it was just like not stopping. So I don't know how many, but like hundreds or thousands of cold outreaches and meeting. A lot of our first customers were in person, like we drive a couple hours to meet a company, then come back and do a meeting in the city, and then drive out the next day to like a suburb to meet another company. And a lot of our early companies actually came in the same like local region because we were willing to do the work to go see them in person.
Nice.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
was really cool. And I think you can do a ton of business remotely, and like there's tons of benefits. But we got some of that really early. Like you get longer meetings and you can pull people in and you can just see the excitement or the like leave me aloneness of the person you're talking to,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's
Mm-hmm.
lots of rejection. And I think sales can sometimes have like a negative connotation, but it's just like helping them make progress. And I think that progress can even be if it's like not a fit. And so we
Mm-hmm.
would talk to companies, and it was really hard in the early days. But if we could see like we just can't help them, they're like a huge bank and they need all these security features that we just don't have. Like we would say, I just don't think it's going to work. But it was better for them because they got like a clear decision sooner. Better for us because we didn't spend
Mm-hmm.
the time. And
Mm-hmm.
we ended up over the next like few years, it was amazing how a lot of those people would come back again. They'd be like, "Oh, we're revisiting the project, and I know you're further along," or "Oh, hey, I really liked what you did, and my friend at similar company is actually looking for a solution." So I found just like helping the person get to their own best decision was helpful. One, to help them, but also like we had a lot of those people eventually become customers or give us referrals or eventually testimonials. And so it
I
was just
love
like a
that.
constant, yeah, it was just a constant sell, not in a snake oily way, like just helping them make progress, not necessarily make a purchase.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Just helping people along in their journey.
Yeah.
I always reflect back on, and you think about some of the customers that this dot has had, and the journeys that or our points of contact, let's say, and the journeys that we've seen them go through for years and years. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is so, and then 5 years later, 8 years later, you wake up and you're like, wow, this, I can't believe we've known each other for so long across, four different companies now. So no, that's really exciting. And I think that really also solidifies this idea of, you know, relationships. It really is about relationships. It's not so transactional. And maybe if you focus a little bit more on the transactional, you probably won't have as much people returning to you as you guys did.
Yeah, it can often feel like that on, especially like in a business interaction or relationship, right? Like you get on the phone call and it's like, well, what does the person want? And they're like, it can feel like, oh, if you can help me, that's great. If you can't help me, I'm on to the next. As
Mm-hmm.
opposed
Mm-hmm.
to like, it's still a person at the other end of the screen or at the table when we used to do in-person meetings. And
Yeah.
like, I find, or I try at least, to not be so tailored around like what's the topic of the meeting, and
Mm-hmm.
less so like if there's something they're struggling with that isn't maybe the product that we offer, but like is something that maybe I can still help them with the thing they are struggling with. Like, and that can be in a business partnership. So we had a lot of our prior customers, they needed help just like building their developer community with like forum tools and like Stack Overflow style ranking sites, and we would just like, hey, here's what we understand, here's how we think about them, here's the different ways we evaluate them, we've heard this is great, I'll intro you to the person at this tool. And like there were
Mm-hmm.
no like referrals or kickbacks, it was just like helpful.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, I sometimes found like trying to broaden the scope of the problem the person is struggling with, and then figuring out like, can you help them, just to help them through like part of that other problem, again, not to
Mm-hmm.
get something in return, but it makes for like a better relationship, right? And maybe they help you on something unrelated, maybe they do want to become a customer, but that's not the ultimate point.
Yeah.
Probably gets to some fluffy level of karma around there, right, where you're just helping, but even still, if nothing else, it's just kind of more fun too, right? It's more fun to
Yeah.
like help people do their thing and not be like, well, okay, you've served your purpose, I'm on to the next.
Well, it's so funny because I feel like in this conversation, you've basically said it's not really selling, it's helping people. But then previously you said, you should really be selling, 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 and kind of doing something, it's all about selling.
I think
So,
I think selling, well, not think. So they're one and the same in my head. So selling
mhm.
is just helping people make
Mm,
progress on some axis. So they're one and the same.
mm.
Um,
So when you say selling, it's not really, it's helping people. It's not necessarily selling your product or getting them to convert
yeah,
to your
totally.
product.
Yeah. Well, like if you take the product out of the equation, like they're talking to you because they have some problem. And
Hmm.
so like if you can help them solve the problem, that's great. Your
Hmm.
product just happens to be the medium. Like if you can help them, then
Hmm.
that's fine. But like that's to me that's like the primary act of sales is just helping them solve their problem faster,
Yeah.
easier, cheaper. Yeah, it's one and the same in my head.
Yeah.
Um, it's not the classic, like I said, not the snake oily style stuff that we all
Yeah.
think maybe.
I mean, I love that because it's a little bit counterintuitive, but it also makes a lot of sense, right? And I think another thing you said is this whole idea of, uh, getting to know,
Oh,
getting to know faster, I suppose. Or, I mean, we talk about this idea of like how helping companies make progress even when it is a no. Um, how do you, I mean, you've said no to a lot of customers. Have there been really difficult no's that you've had to say in the past?
yeah, well, I wonder there. I think there's a well-known sales book called Getting Past No. So I'm sure a lot
Uh-huh.
of like that author or lots of people would maybe disagree, or that's the other side of the coin. Like a no is just a next step in the path to help the person buy. I don't know if I totally agree with that, but maybe
Hmm.
there's another way to think about it. For the getting to know, um, yeah, I only realized it once. I guess to be honest, we like kind of really pushed a customer and said yes, and it was like not a good relationship. And
Uh-huh.
so we had a couple customers where we could kind of feel like we maybe weren't the best fit for them, and like maybe our product wasn't quite ready, or we just like we knew that they weren't like the ideal customer, but they wanted to
Hmm.
move forward, and we said, okay, well, let's try it. And we had probably one or two of them, and it didn't end well. Well, not end, like it they clearly weren't as happy as we wanted. We weren't as happy. It was taking too much time out of the business. It was really costly to maintain that customer. We weren't happy with like the level of service we were giving them. We weren't delivering quick enough. Like it just wasn't great for both either the customer or for us. And it was painful. So I only learned to get to know until like I had the painful yeses. And so when the next customer who like didn't feel like a great fit came, I had more fortitude to say like, well, remember what happened last time. It was really hard and the customer probably wasn't as happy as they should have been. And so maybe we should be proactive and say like, I don't think it's a great fit this time. Or I think we would try to say like, here's why it's not a great fit. And like, actually we plan to be there in 6 months. And so like, if you can wait, that's great. Or come back to us. Like there's usually some gap that we couldn't fill. That was the reason we weren't a great fit. But yeah, it was only through like some of the painful yeses that I figured out like it's better to tell the customer like not right now. Here's what I understand of the landscape of the market. Here's what I think could be a decent other solution. Or once we're ready, I'll let you know.
That's definitely difficult. But I think once you have those lessons learned under your belt, and you realize, it's the bright and shiny money or the bright and shiny SOW, and then it goes completely wrong. I was actually talking to somebody who's thinking about starting something, and we were talking about the types of clients. And so it's never good to be paired with a client who, I think this whole idea of it takes up a lot of time, right? If they can't afford it and they're stretching their budget, let's say, to afford something, and they're like, you better be giving me the, utmost white glove treatment. And for you, it's a really, really, really small customer that you feel like you're doing them a favor, then there's never going to be a match and both parties are going to be incredibly unhappy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure you would have seen this a ton at this dot, right? Like it just doesn't seem like the best fit, but we were guilty of it being bootstrapped. Like the revenue or something was like, oh no, but it's still quote unquote worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we started to develop this concept of like, quality of revenue. Like not all dollar was created equal in our minds. And so there's a dollar from a particular customer, but because we were bootstrapped and cash flow positive, but we had to manage that because some of our customers were annual, so it was lumpy. We started to think of like, what's the quality of that revenue? And that was like, well, how good a fit is the customer? How established are they? How quickly do they pay? What is the contract value? Do we think they have the ingredients to succeed with our product? Like what's their probability of hitting the goal they state is their goal? Because it's never 100%. How uniform is the revenue? Like, will they have some services or not? And so we tried to think of two customers. How can we think about the quality of the revenue from customer A as different quality, good or bad, from customer B? And how do we prioritize? Yeah, so that was...
Did you actually create a spreadsheet for that and
No,
measure the quality of revenue?
No, I think one of the faults of early stage companies is like you just cram more stuff in your head. So it was and probably because it was a little too feel based, like through this, especially through like a non one call sale, like through a longer sales cycle of 60 or 90 days, like you get a qualitative feel for like how the customer thinks and how they operate. And like a lot of that was how we would also think about quality of revenue on top of like amount, company, stage, probability of success, how much they're leaned in, even with their level of enthusiasm was a huge one, right? How much are they like, how responsive are they? How much are they pushing the pace? How much do they want to move as fast as they can? How much are we the bottleneck, which is amazing. That's a huge part of it. Yeah.
I'm like, can we create an online calculator for quality of revenue? Because so when we were house shopping, my husband, he created this spreadsheet. And because, house shopping is the same thing, right? It can be a very emotional thing, just like a bootstrap founder, right? It can be very emotional. You can give up. You're exhausted. You didn't get the house you wanted, et cetera, et cetera. But what he would do was he would say, okay, how important is a big kitchen to us? How important is a big master bedroom to us? How important is, being 10 minutes away from Whole Foods, right? And he would give each house a score before we even looked at it in a spreadsheet to score like how much we actually like the house.
Oh, wow.
So you kind of take like the emotional,
yeah,
trauma of buying a house, I suppose, out of it. But I actually think that's incredibly valid and useful for founders to do too. Because then again, you're having a more data focused conversation versus
Yeah.
a, oh my God, we can't make payroll. Like we just got to take this revenue. Because, all those emotional decisions typically end in regret.
Totally. I like the house
Hmm.
analogy, which it is an emotional decision. And you're right,
Hmm.
it can feel emotional when especially when you're bootstrapped and like, well, we just need it, or if we need it, if we get it, then we can hire this employee faster. It's
Yeah.
such a huge part of it for sure. Yeah, I wonder if there's a more scalable way to think of. I know Bill Gurley has like a post, not all revenues created equal, or something like that. Or like
Hmm.
there's 10, it's a little bit more through the marketplace lens of like for any given digital marketplace, how do you think about quality of revenue?
Hmm.
Um, I wonder if there's an equivalent for a SaaS startup, but it's an interesting concept for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, So, speaking of SaaS, and oh my gosh, AI is taking over the world. And you've told me you've been dabbling these days in AI products. Like, what are some of the most exciting AI things that you have discovered or been playing with lately?
Yeah, the one, it's just fun to finally be able to play with them. I think all the buzz is, I guess everyone has their aha moment, and when you have a few of them in a row, like you really start to realize like it's almost addictive, the iteration speed of like how fast you can get the information back and structure it. And you're like, oh my God, what would have taken
Yes.
me weeks is like a 30-minute exercise. I think the thing that we were talking about, and I think one of maybe the struggles with AI is like it can be a solution looking for a problem. Like everyone talks about it and everyone's supposed to be using it in all these magical ways, but sometimes you can struggle to find the specific thing like the problem it's solving for a customer or a need, and like I think that still really matters. Um, so the area I've been thinking about is, I mean, we were talking about this, like the customization of software at scale. And so traditionally that has been whether it's a user like changing some of the menu items to make it fit them better, or hiring like a service provider to customize the software for them, or using third-party partners that plug in to customize the software that's not in a way that's not provided by the third-party platform. Like all those are great solutions to help a customer like get the software that fits them a little bit better, but it's still not perfect. All those are still non-truly like for the individual. And I think if AI is a way to let you just like speak the thing you want, I want the interface to look in this color scheme, in this way, with this layout, and I want it to change every 7 days, and I want it to speak in Spanish one day a week because I'm working on my Spanish, or some weird esoteric thing. Like if AI is a way to do that, then maybe a lot of the technology partnerships and ISVs and a lot of the like service providers and implementation partners, I don't know if they go away, but maybe they look very different. And maybe there's a world where like a user adopts a SaaS platform and they just kind of tell it out of the gate in my own language, like the custom things I want, and it just puts that in front of me. And then you have a platform where maybe there's 10 million users worldwide, and there's like 10 million individual custom instances for all the users, where they're all slightly bespoke, and like everyone actually gets their own kind of cool little customization and
That's
custom
going to
version of
be like
software
and then there's going to be, a myspace.com for
for everything.
your for your little websites. But it would be really interesting to see what comes out of that. I remember using I don't know if you've played around with V0 or not, Vercel's V0.
No, not yet.
But it's the same thing, right? Like you can basically say, hey, build me this thing, and it'll kind of like create all the components for you, and anyways, it's easy to use. But point being is I was giving a lot of talks on AI last year, and what I would do is I would create an app in V0, like a chatbot in V0, but I
Mhm.
would start saying things like, okay, create me two chatbots side by side. One is Taylor Swift, one is Kanye, and they should talk like them, and there should be unicorns coming out of every single one. Right. And so, like, the fun, just random things you can do with AI just to make your life a little bit more entertaining, I think is super amazing. But then
Yeah.
I think to the customization part, it's I don't know. I would just love to see what everybody decides to customize their their own little SaaS to be, right? Like, who
Well,
knows?
I assume the way I think about it is those customizations are a byproduct of the business that like if let's say I'm a business owner and I'm using
Mm-hmm.
Stripe and Airtable and
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce, the customizations I want are a result of the idiosyncratic nature of my own business. So my wife runs a financial planning firm, and there's a lot of unique ways in which they build different types of customers based on complexities and based on where the customer lives and based on the style of engagement they're comfortable with. And like there's no billing tool that is built for like advice only financial planning firms. So she has all these weird idiosyncratic customizations that are not like on a whim. They're a very direct need of the way people pay for my service is based on this complexity. There's no like good way to solve it. So that's like an example of, well, I want all these unique customizations for my own business. And then the bakery down the street that has to charge like a bunch of different prices for, I don't know, different ingredients or different types of muffin. Like then they might have some idiosyncratic nature of their particular business as well. I don't know what that would be. I don't work in a bakery, but I think it's not like on a whim of someone's head. It'll be, I think most businesses are actually unique, if for no other reason than the owner is unique and they imply some of their ideas on the business, right? Like two coffee shops side by side are not the same. They're different because two owners thought the world needed these two particular coffee shops, right? And so I think,
I could see Stripe coming out with a product like that. Like, because I know there's you can very easily build, not a plug for Stripe, but you can very easily build marketplaces on Stripe, right?
yeah, for
So
sure.
imagine if you could just, use AI to just build a marketplace on Stripe and have it customized to all the bakeries or all the
Totally.
dog walkers or whatever. That would be so amazing and so easy and require almost zero developers, probably a smaller team of developers. Um, that's pretty inspiring. I like this idea.
It's a
I
smaller
like this
team for
idea.
sure, right? And then
Yeah.
you're right. It's like I'm a marketplace for used fashion goods and I need to convert sizes from European to US and there's no
Mm-hmm.
weird tool. So when you build a marketplace, make sure that on the UI every time you show a shoe size for a user that's looking at a shoe that's in Europe but they're based in the US, make sure you show them the conversion. Like that's a very niche thing, but that
Yeah.
marketplace if they're selling really high-end used heels, they're going to
Yeah.
actually need that. And so that's an example of like my business has this funny little thing. But I think
Yeah.
every one of my beliefs is like every business actually has funny little things. And
Yes.
you actually
Yes.
want them to be able to do it. That's where
Yeah.
the customization idea comes from.
Do you feel like this is going to be the biggest kind of area in which AI is going to have the impact on SaaS in the next few years? Or do you think there are other things?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't know if I know. I think about this area because it's an area I spent a lot of time thinking about prior.
Mm-hmm.
Whether this is in particular the most impactful area for SaaS, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think it. I think it probably. No, I think it probably varies by industry, by vertical, by type of software. Like, I think if you could drastically speed up the like drug development is probably a software problem deep down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Software and
Mm-hmm.
machine like if you can cut the time of drug development even by 50% or 80%, like the value to humanity is enormous, and
Oh my God. I feel
that
like even by
probably
20%.
trumps integration problems, right? So
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if I think of this as the biggest. I think it's just an area that I think is I think um, one thing that AI will be good at sooner is doing the things that people don't like doing. And
Mm-hmm.
so the idea of like building integrations and glue code and making systems, like nobody actually likes doing that stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
engineers don't like doing it. It's not glamorous. It breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't
Mm-hmm.
get well rated in your performance. Like I did a bunch of like legacy integrations. Like nobody cares, but you need them to operate real businesses. And that's why I
Mm-hmm.
think it's like interesting in the short term. Um, I don't think it's whether it's the gold or the pot at the end of the rainbow. I think there's probably other candidates.
Hmm. I like that. It's giving me so many interesting ideas. And now I see things a little bit differently too. So this was an amazing conversation. You said you don't have social media. I mean, you're on LinkedIn though, right?
I have LinkedIn.
Are you,
Like I used to have it for work, but yeah, I don't. I'm pretty. My wife teases me all the time. I'm pretty bad at other social stuff, so I don't have anything else. But I have LinkedIn.
Okay. So if people want to reach out to you to hang out and say hi or anything like that, is LinkedIn the best place
Yeah,
to
LinkedIn
go?
is perfect. I'll just like a connect or DM, and then I'll go from there for sure.
Okay, well, amazing. Do you have any last pieces of advice for founders? I mean, you've definitely had an amazing journey, right? Being acquired, running a startup for so long, and then kind of seeing the end of it.
I'm sure no big say pieces of sage wisdom. I think so. I used to play a lot of music, and people always say like, "Oh, I wish I could play an instrument," and would always say to them, I think way more people are musical and creative and can play an instrument than think they can. Like I think the
Mm,
barrier is the person, not the instrument.
yes.
And I
Or your
think,
mind,
or
your mind,
yeah, I
right?
think that the
Hmm.
same is probably true for starting something. I think way more people can do it than do it, um, and it's like it's just doing it. And I think way more people are capable and able and could do it, and then think they can. And so maybe it's just like it's actually just going and doing it, and the barrier is not the software or the startup or the instrument. It's just the person.
Yes, that is very true. I'm the opposite side of the coin. I'm like, oh, I can do that. Let's go.
You're
So,
you're the ready, fire, aim, which I also love people like that, right? You're like, what's that? I also joke with my wife. I'm like, you have the fastest idea to proof of. We were talking about something with our kids, and we
yeah.
were like, we should try this idea a couple times a week. And like before I blink, she's like, kids, here's what we're doing. I'm like, you have the fastest iteration time in the world, and that is such an endearing and like valuable operator trait, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I think
Yeah.
that's so important. I can sit and contemplate sometimes, which is not a good trait.
Yeah, yeah. And then always, if you're, I always find one of my good friends. He's an investor in a lot of startups, and he started his own a few years ago, and it was so funny because he all the advice he would give himself, he was basically doing this, this whole like, we're not ready to launch, we're not ready to launch, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what would you tell somebody you invested in? You would have told them to, 3 years
Yeah,
later, there's no launch. But it's kind of the same thing. So yeah, I always joke, if you hang out with me too long, you'll probably start a company. Um,
then that's amazing. Then people should be pounding on your door to spend time with you. That's incredible.
Well, Michael, this is so fun of a conversation, and everybody definitely check out Michael. Really excited to see what you do next. Maybe it'll be an AI, maybe it'll be something else, but definitely find Michael on LinkedIn, and we'll see everybody next time.